1948 until 55 today. So interesting how gospel about authority from the spiritist doctrine and the same appear with some details about formation of this philosophy about spiritism. I not have the book, I have only digital book. Genesis, you can get this in Brazilian site. Federação FIESP. FIESP. Federação Espírita do Estado de São Paulo. São Paulo Spiritist Federation from this state. There are free downloads to you in English, in French, in German, and Spanish too, I think. Go there. You will search this and other books. Here is item 47. This situation about spiritism, a herd of in the history of doctrines has provided with an exceptional force and an irresistible power of action. In fact, even if it were repressed in one place, in one country, it would be materially impossible to repress it in all places, in all countries. For every one place where it may be prohibited, there will be 1,000 others where it will flourish. What is more, even if it might be still fled in an individual person, the same could not be done with spirits, its source. Therefore, since spirits are everywhere and will always exist, if by some impossible chance it could be suppressed all over the globe, it would differ sometimes thereafter, because it rests on a fact, and this fact lies within nature itself, and the laws of nature cannot be suppressed. This is what should dissuade those who dream of the myths of spiritism. See Revue Espírita, February 1865, the year, page 38. Perpétuité du spiritisme. Nevertheless, this scattered center might still remain isolated from one another for a long time, confined as some of them are in far-off countries. Among these, there would have to be a unity link that would put them in communication of thought with their brothers and sisters in the faith, in order to inform them about what was happening elsewhere. This unity link spiritism used to lack can be found today in the publications which circulate far and wide and which condense in one single, concise and methodical approach the teachings provided everywhere under multiple forms and in many languages. See how spirituality, search Kardec, scientist, and his wife too, Mrs. Amélie Boudet, was a woman working with education and had the same organization, didactic organization, how Kardec, and was a great force by his side. The first two revelations could only have been the result of a direct teaching, since humans were not yet sufficiently advanced to aid in these revelations development. They had to be imposed on people's lips through the authority of the master word. However, we should make note of the fact that they contained a highly perceptible nuance in connection with the progress of customs and ideas, although they were given to the same people and in the same environment, although after an interval of 18 centuries, the doctrine of Moses is absolute despotic. It accepts no argument and it imposes on all the people through force. That of Jesus is essentially one of concealing. It's accepted freely and imposes itself only through persuasion. It was controversial even during the time of its founder, who didn't hesitate to debate his adversaries. The third revelation, appearing at the time of intellectual emancipation and maturity, wherein the developed mind cannot settle itself into a passive mode, and wherein people accept nothing blindly, but want to see where they are being led and to know the why and how of each thing had to be at the same time the product of a teaching and the fruit of work, research, and free examination. The spirits teach only what is needed to place humans on the path of truth, but they abstain from revealing. They abstain from revealing what humans can discover by themselves. This is a paradox of Piaget too, with education child. It's the same idea. Only after we construct, we will learn what is necessary to our evolution. Not a people said to us, make this now, make this after, make this before. This don't resolve our problem. We must have children get the idea in concrete. After children get in Montessori technique, two parts, one by one block is equal to blocks. The child touch this and understand that forms two blocks. More late, this child will abstract this dot. People in science is the same way. Maybe people must research must understand, must search actions and results of actions to make a theory about it. It's necessary touch in the same way without some situation, or in psychology, feel this situation to program a scientific discovery. Then Kardec make this. They was searching. Spirits, high spirits made inferior, medium, and high level, various levels of spirits, manifestation by in front of Kardec. Some then gave name, gave address in planet when they are in the body, and after that, they account these stories, these sensations. Kardec must have concrete information after him construct his philosophical thoughts, his not only philosophical, his logical thoughts. In all situations, these are normal words. Millions of people and millions of spirits manifestations in those sectors. Since Peru in Central America until beyond Asiatics, North Asiatic people, all then claim that Kardec's prayer, because they were receiving various information. The information how Kardec was here was in parts of the world, not in one place, not with one person. Kardec only unified those knowledge because his philosophical mind and scientific mind too, to develop about all this situation, a logic thought about it was marvelous word, directly by high spirit, millions of them, millions manifestations in this planet, and all places don't know about others. Only with the spirits, Kardec would visualization this broken head. I don't know if this is English name. Again, named broken head in Brazil. Quebra-cabeças. Then Kardec visualization all together. And plus the great and enormous work to organize matter, using his logical thought with questions that came to him from various places in the world that don't have connected inter. See, no, never. Only Kardec was the center of this. Because he, in those times, had a magazine about it. The third revelation appearing at a time of intellectual emancipation and maturity, wherein the developed mind cannot settle itself in capacity to grow, and wherein people accept nothing blindly, but want to see where they are being led and to know the why and how of each thing had to be at the same time the product of a teaching at the fruit of work, the certain fearsome nature. The Spirit speaks only what is needed to place human on the path of the truth. So they abstain from revealing what humans can discover by themselves. It's our work to evolve in ideas too. Allowing them the right to discuss, verify, and submit everything to the crucible of wisdom, even leading them many times to acquire experience at their own expense. The spirits have furnished them with the principle and materials. It's their responsibility to take advantage of them and put them into practice. Really, we are losing time. If we believe in one thing and don't put in practice this. Since the elements of the Spirit's revelation have been given simultaneously in a multitude of places to persons of all social conditions and various degrees of education, it's quite obvious that observations could not have been made everywhere with the same outcome, and that the consequence derived from them the deductions of the laws that govern that order of phenomena. In a word, the conclusion that would establish the ideas could be derived only from the whole and from a correlation of the facts. Hence, each isolated center limited, each isolated spiritual center of millions, isolated each other, limited to a narrow circle and often observing only a particular order of phenomena. Can you understand? The centers have a bit of this all great word. Take to spirits, high spirits take to Kardec the mission of unify all this knowledge, organize statements, and make 5 books with help of my spirit, of course. But they must use it as logical laws to separate what was real from what was made the lesson of this great word. A moment, please. Now it's okay. Continue this matter. This item 5.1. And that the consequence derived from them, the deductions of the laws that govern that order of phenomena. In a word, the conclusion that would establish the ideas could be derived only from the whole and from a correlation of the facts. Hence, isolated center, each isolated center was more than 1,000 of them in all lands in the world, limited to a narrow circle and often observing only a particular order of phenomena, at times contradictory in appearance because they had to do with only one category of spirits, and furthermore being hindered by local influences and sectarianism, found itself running up against the material impossibility of encompassing the whole, and for this very reason powerless to combine the isolated observations into a common principle, which with each person judging the facts from the point of view of his or her own knowledge and former beliefs, or from the particular opinion of the spirits who manifested themselves, there would very soon have been as many theories and systems as there were centers, and all would be incomplete for lack of elements for comparison and control. See how the clear mind of Kardec was capable to organize all this. See this? Or from the particular opinion of the spirits who manifested themselves, have incarnated person with mind, the spirits with his own knowledge, because it was various levels of mind. See what word? Who manifested themselves, there would very soon have been as many theories and systems as these were centers, and all would be incomplete for lack of elements for comparison and control. In sum, each person would be paralyzed by his or her own partial revelation, of course, believing that he or her had the whole truth, not knowing that in 100 other places more and better information had been obtained. Only Kardec have a key of this broken head game. Wasn't a game, but it's how a industry where various parts of one product was being elaborated, but each group don't know about other. See this? How to see have a hand of God inside this, up of all this. For lack whole truth, not knowing that in 100 other places more and better information had been obtained. Furthermore, it should be noted that no part of Spiritism teaching has been given in its entirety. It touches upon such a large number of observations in the world, and such diverse subjects that require either specialized knowledge or mediumistic abilities, that it would have been impossible to bring all the necessary conditions together in one place. It was not possible. In one place in the world, no. For one person, no. Since the teachings had to be collective and not individual. The spirits divided up the work disseminating the subjects of study and observation, as is done in certain factories, where the production of each part of the same object is divided up among different workers. Thus, the revelation was given partially in several places and through a multitude of intermediaries. And it is in the manner that it continues to progress at its time, for not everything has yet been revealed. Each center finds in others a supplement for what it has obtained, and it's this collection, the coordination of all the partial teachings that comprises the Spiritist doctrine. It was therefore necessary to group the scattered facts in order to understand their correlation and to collect the diverse documents and teachings given by the spirits regarding all points and subjects in order to compare, analyze, and study their similarities and differences. Since communications are given by spirits of all the hierarchical orders, some more enlightened than others, it would be necessary to analyze the degree of trust that reason would allow to be given to them. This distinguish the individual and isolated theoretical ideas from those that had the sanction of the overall teachings of the spirits, and the utopian ideas from the practical ones, to prove those that were obviously refuted by data arising from positive science and sound logic, and to utilize the errors and the information furnished by spirits, even those of the lowest category. See, this is a work that participates in criminals, suicides, high spirits, medium spirits, happy spirits, rich material spirits that have riches when I was incarnated, and was the last incarnation. How rich, see this. Then various levels, since killers, suiciders, robbers, honest, happiness, spirits in happiness, elevated spirits, the spirits in last incarnation, all then give here collaboration. It's a totally democratic work by God, by Christ too. Because don't have hell, eternal hell don't exist. Exists a great time, maybe spirits are imprisoned in your own conscious, not from God. And now in your own conscious, see this. And we must an eternity to the spirit, because time out of this planet is different. There no have the sun and the moon, don't have it. It's different. the way to count the time. It would be necessary to analyze the degree of trust that reason would allow to be given to them to distinguish the individual isolated theoretical ideas from those that had the sanction of the overall teachings of the spirits, and utopian ideas from the practical ones, to prune those that were obviously refuted by data arising from positive science and sound logic, and to utilize the errors and the information furnished by spirits, even those of the lowest category, for an understanding of the state of the invisible world, thereby forming an homogeneous whole. In other words, a center for development was necessarily independent of any preconceived idea, of any sectarian prejudice, and resolved to accept the truth that had become self-evident, even if it were contrary to personal opinion. Is a mind of a scientist is this way, or must be this way. Such a center formed by itself through the force of things and without premeditated intent. He have a Rosa note, the Spirit book, the first work that enables spiritism to enter the philosophical path through the deduction of the moral implications of the phenomena, and which addresses all the parts of the doctrine by touching upon the most important questions that it raised, has been since its appearance the reliant point to which the individual works spontaneously converged. It's noteworthy that from the publication of that book dates the era of Spiritist philosophy, and a philosophy that until then had remained in the domain of curious experiences. If that book has won the sympathy of the majority, it's because it's the expression of their sentiments and response to their aspirations. It's also because each one has found therein the confirmation and rational exploration of what he or she had obtained individually. If it were in disagreement with the overall teachings of the spirits, it would not have had any credibility and would have quickly fallen into oblivion. Spirits, it would not have had any credibility and would have quickly fallen into oblivion. So to whom have we converged? Certainly not to any one human being in particular, who is nothing by him or herself, but a mainspring that dies and disappears, but to the idea which does not perish because it emanates from a source higher than a human one. The spontaneous concentration of scattered forces has given way to an immense correspondence, a unique monument in the world, a living picture of the true history of modern spiritism, where at the same time are reflected the partial works, the multiple sentiments that gave birth to the doctrine, the moral results, the devotedness, and the failures, precious archives for posterity, which will be able to judge individuals and things based on authentic records. In the presence of such irrefutable evidence, what will subsequently become of all the false allegations and defamations out of envy and jealousy? 43, all this I read was the words of Kardec. From this state of affairs, this item 2 is an explanation from Kardec. Item 53. From this state of affairs, a double current of ideas resulted. So moving from the perimeter tower to center, other from the center tower to perimeter. A circle that center, perimeter, center. This is how the doctrine progressed rapidly toward unity, and in spite of the diversity of the sources from which it emanated, and how the divergent theories fell little by little due to their isolation and due to the ascendancy of the opinion of the majority, in which they did not find a sympathetic echo. A communication of ideas has thus been established among the different centers. Speaking the same spiritual language, they understand one another and sympathize with one another from one end of the world to the other. The Spiritists were much stronger and struggled with more courage. They progressed with a shorter step when they found themselves no longer isolated, and when they sensed a point of support, a tie that linked them to the larger family. The phenomena they witnessed no longer seemed peculiar, abnormal, or contradictory to them, once they were able to connect them to the general laws of harmony. Embracing the edifying one glance and seeing a great and humanitarian aim in the entire whole. A note, a great note, a significant testimony as noteworthy as it is touching to this communication of thought that has been established among spirits thought. The conformity of their beliefs are the prayer requests that have come to us from the most distant countries, from Peru to the ends of Asia, and the part of people of different religions and nationalities, and whom we have never even seen. Is this not the prelude to the great unification that is being prepared? It's not proof that Spiritism is extending its vigorous roots far and wide. It's an exclamation of Kardec. It's remarkable that of all the groups that have formed with the premeditated intention of creating a schism by proclaiming divergent principles, just like those who do to reasons of self-centeredness or others, don't want to appear subject to the common law, but regard themselves as strong enough to proceed alone with enough knowledge to dispense with any guidance. None has arrived at constructing an idea that is preponderant and viable. All have become extinct or vegetated in obscurity. How could it be otherwise, since in order to distinguish themselves, instead of making an effort to provide a greater amount of satisfaction, they rejected precisely those principles of doctrine that were the most powerful, attractive, the most consoling, the most encouraging, and the most rational. If they had understood the power of the moral elements that comprised its unity, they would not have been deluded by a chimerical illusion, but taking their little circle to be the whole universe. They didn't see in the doctrines adherents more than a clique that could easily be overthrown by a rival one. They were strangely mistaken about. However, how can one know if a principle is not universally, or if it's only the result of a personal opinion? Since isolated groups were in no position to know what was being said elsewhere, it was necessary for one center to bring together all the teachings in order to do a kind of scrutiny of views and to take the opinion of the majority to everyone else. Have one note here. The essential characteristics of doctrine and that mistake could lead to nothing but disappointment. Instead of destroying its unity, they broke the only connection that could give them power and life. See Spirit magazine, April 1866, page 106 and 111. Let spirits the spirits by spirits, the spiritism by spirits, and spiritism independent spiritism is the note. Return 5-4. There is no science which in all its parts has come from the mind of one sole human being. All without exception are all the science, principally, and knowledge, word knowledge, without exception are products of successive observations that find support in previous ones, leading on one noun point to arrive at an unknown one. That is how the spirits have proceeded with spiritism. That is why their teaching has been gradual. They address issues only in proportion and to the extent that the principles upon which such issues must be based have been sufficiently developed and analysis has matured enough to assimilate them. It's quite significant that every time individual centers have tried to address issues prematurely, they have obtained only contradictory and inconclusive answers. On the other hand, when the favorable moment has arrived, the teaching generalizes and becomes unified in almost all of the centers. Between the progression of the spiritism and that of the science, there is a crucial difference. However, the latter reach the point to which they have arrived only after a long stretch of time, whereas only a few years have been sufficient for spiritism, if not to reach the peak, at least to collect a number of observations large enough to constitute a doctrine. This is due to the incalculable multitude of spirits who, by God's will, have manifested simultaneously, each one bringing the contingent of its own knowledge. The result of this was that, instead of being developed successively over many centuries, all the parts of the doctrine were formed almost simultaneously in a matter of a few years, which was sufficient to group them and form a whole. God has willed it to be so. First, so that the building could more happily be built up to the top. Second, so that it could, by means of comparison, have an immediate and permanent control, so to speak, in the universality of the teaching, each part having worth or authority only by its connection with the whole. Each part harmonized with every other part, each finding its place in the general order, and each arriving at the right time. By not entrusting to only a single spirit the task of promulgating the doctrine, God has also willed that the least as much as the greatest among the spirits, as well as humans, being their stone to the building, in order to establish amongst themselves a bond of comparative solidarity that was lacking in all the other doctrines arising from one single source. A pair that had religions that appear in this planet from one woman to have great doubt in various points that I was near this religion and don't like it, what they make to solution a problem with one of those religious in this religion. In this we can see that the only mind that decides about life of the other and the wrong form. On the other hand, since each spirit, just like each human being, has only a limited amount of knowledge individually. They were unable to address ex professo the innumerable issues touched upon by spiritism. Ex professo. I don't know what is this. I need to see Portuguese. On the other hand, since each spirit, just like each human being, has only a limited amount of knowledge individually, they were unable to address ex professo the innumerable issues touched upon by spiritism. This is also why that in order to fulfill the Creator's designs, the doctrine could not be the work of only one spirit or of only one medium. It could emerge only from a collection of works, all controlled by one another. The spiritism in reason is a consensus by reunion of ideas that resolve problems of all people in the world that was in affinity with those ideas and with logical thought, not only from Kardec, but all collectivity that participate of this in all world appear in this doctrine. I can imagine how marvelous movement of mediums and spirits only must have been the all situation by a mountain that spirits, but Kardec, he got to see this.